Now I don't have to do anything, right? Like,
Hello, welcome to Actual Spinster. My name is Anna Marie and I have a guest
hi,
today.
my name is Marty, and I have COVID.
Yeah, normally I guess it seems like maybe that's why this is not in person because normally we make videos.
Oh, yeah,
Anyway,
that
um,
is true. Yeah.
so today I thought that, or like I wanted to bring Mari onto my channel because we both recently-ish, read Homage to Catalonia by George Orwell. And I just thought it would be nice to have a chat about it. It's just going to be chill, but definitely, like, I would love to hear other people's thoughts about like this book and also what we talk about with it and stuff. So, yeah, hope that makes sense. Do you want to start by just talking about what you thought about it, or like maybe why you wanted to read it or something?
Yeah, I wanted to read it because I hadn't read anything by George Orwell so in like 10 years. I read 1984 when I was probably like 19. I kind of like liked it but didn't love it. Or like I thought it was really interesting, but I also remember maybe thinking that it was like a little bit annoying. Or I don't know. But then I think feel like the main thing is that I'm interested in the Spanish Civil War. So then wanting to read something by George Orwell that I maybe would find less annoying. Yeah, I'll reread 1984 at some point and love it or whatever. I remember being like a bit skeptical of the like misogyny in that book and
Hmm.
feeling a bit uncertain of how to place it. Um,
Interesting.
which I guess going into Homage to Catalonia was kind of interesting as well because we talked about before reading it that like um, I read this article about how he like doesn't really mention his wife who's
Yeah.
there like in Spain with him, which I
Which
think
means
is really
we were on wife alert the whole time
yeah,
reading.
yeah. I wouldn't be messaging Anna Marie like, oh, like fifth wife mention. I mean, God. So I think it's like good that that we had our expectations so low. I was like, oh
So,
my God, you
yeah.
can tell that the wife is there. She's buying him cigars and sending them in the post.
And yeah,
um,
at the end, she's very, she packs up, she like makes sure that they don't like get arrested, sort of. And
mm.
yes. Yeah, I haven't read 1984.
You read Animal Farm, maybe.
Oh, I have. I've read Animal Farm.
Mm. I mean,
I've,
it's like yeah. I don't know if you would call it a book,
yeah, it's
but
a
like
novella,
yeah.
which I mean, it was fine. I didn't especially love that, but I also was interested in reading Homage to Catalonia because of the Spanish Civil War angle.
Mm.
But I think we had talked about it many years ago, and we
Mm.
were going to do like
Yeah,
a,
I had forgotten, and
yeah.
then you obviously remember more than I do. So,
But when it comes to books, yeah.
and like information, but let's leave it at that.
Sure. I do think that having had the conversation we had before reading it about his wife, that did shape some of how I felt about it. But I will say, I think I was like really, I wasn't like super surprised, but I was, I guess, pleased by the way he like represented himself,
Mm.
especially in relation
Mm.
to like the war and like I guess maybe we should talk about what exactly the book is. It's a non-fiction account, like it's not a fictional book, about his experience going to fight in the Spanish Civil War in Catalonia. And it's covers a pretty brief amount of time when he was doing that. So is it 1936 or so?
Yeah, I think he gets there like towards the end of the like autumn or something,
Right.
1936, or maybe even later, like towards the end of the year. I think he is like a bit disappointed that he didn't get that earlier because everyone's saying how much like better it was in the beginning and stuff.
And yeah, so it's just like it kind of follows like his like chronologically his experience like doing that. And also it's massively shaped like his experience and then also I would say his reflection is massively shaped by the group that he went out to join. And now I'm going to get all of the names wrong and incorrect. But he was part of the POUM militia who came to be heavily repressed as the left-wing groups that were fighting against the fascists, like as they basically splintered and kind of came apart from various tensions and mostly Stalinism, I would say.
Yeah. And like weird accusations of like Trotskyism, which makes the whole thing so confusing because I think there were actual Trotskyists as well. But then like anyone who's like sort of not a Stalinist, or like anyone who's like the enemy or whatever, are just called Trotskyist. And it's so confusing. It's like extra confusing. But
Yeah,
like Trotskyist just means like person
bad.
who annoyed me. Yeah.
I feel like because I read it a little while ago, it's not as like fresh in my mind about like these different factions because it does just get quite like the like Spider-Man meme of like, you're a Trotskyist, no, you're a Trotsky, it's just, but also I'm pretty sure the POUM were like a Trotskyite like organization, but that not in the sense
I,
of how it came to mean just like, I don't know, backstabbing anarchist that,
yeah.
is actually fascist.
Originally. Yeah, originally I think that's right, although I think they sort of divert from the Trotskyism in the actual sense a little bit, but I could be confusing with a different one.
But yeah, so and because he went to, but like he didn't specifically seek out to like go with the POUM, I think. Like I think it was more because in the international press, like the diversions and the factionalism wasn't really being like reported on. So he just was like, I want to go to be useful and like to be here or whatever. So yeah, like a lot of the book I feel like is kind of about the way that the like tensions and the splits grow and grow between these various factions. And yeah, I guess that's another thing I liked is how like level-headed and like clear he was about, well, I guess what was wrong and what was right, really. And like,
Mm.
yeah. But yeah, I guess
Yeah,
I
he's
didn't quite finish what I meant. Like, the thing that pleased me about his like war stuff, sorry.
no, I was just about to be like, but to why you started talking about this, you wanted to say, like, yeah,
Yeah, it was that like I just liked how he, it seemed like he represented the difficulties of like these like trench warfare stuff without any ego, and I felt like he was very like, and I was fucking terrified.
yeah,
And I really appreciated that. Like I didn't feel like
yeah,
he was trying to be like, and I was a macho man and it was fine.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I thought the same that like the way that he talks about war, it's like it's not giving huge misogynist. Like he's like scared a lot of the time. He admits to his like shortcomings, or at least like he wanted to kill a fascist, and I think he mentions multiple times, and he's so disappointed in himself.
Yeah.
He's distraught at times because he's not killed a fascist, and they're like, I don't know, he's on the front lines, and they're not like doing anything particularly useful.
Yeah, and I mean I think like he represents the frustrations of being like in the front line well as well, and like just about the like difficulty in terms of like resource sharing, especially like for like arms and stuff. I mean,
Yeah, but all those like, what are what are the people who like are not the Trotskyists?
oh, the Popular Front.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably right. The coalition which formed the 1936 Republican government, sort of the whole thing, but I guess also like what, yeah, the people who came out on top, kind
Yeah,
of.
what were we talking about?
That they, because George Orwell complains about how the Popular Front
Oh,
has all the guns when he's like in Barcelona or whatever, and there's like the shootouts. He's like, why are these fucking people who aren't on front lines have like
yeah.
so many? They have the only like decently working arms that he's seen in this whole time.
Yeah, I guess reading it as someone who has a lot of positive feelings about the like Popular Front and people fighting against fascists, which obviously I still do, but like it was a bit of a like grounding moment to read about like in depth about all of this stuff because I obviously knew that like it fell apart because basically the communists turned on the anarchists, and then obviously that was the cohesion that like was the front against fascism, and obviously that broke it apart. But to read about it like in depth was tough. And also I
Mm.
guess some of the like stuff where it's like, well, the leadership of like even the CNT, which was, one of the most like radical and like anarchist leaving trade union stuff, there was still a difference between like the commitment to working class revolution that the like rank and file of them had versus the leadership who were like in the Popular Front government, and like made me
Yeah,
sad, I guess.
I think George Orwell did say that he wishes he joined the FAI, the militia of the CNT instead. And he has a lot of like really warm and beautiful things to say about anarchists.
Oh yes, and every time like an anarchist did something nice or like did something that like against the grain of like these like Stalinist commies who started like wanting to downgrade the revolutionary potential of it all, he would like make a point to say, but the anarchists weren't doing that, or like
Mm,
the anarchists were still against that, and I like that a lot. Yeah. Another thing I thought was like good or like interesting about his discussion was something that I feel like I also have noticed like in the contemporary discussion about like why people like went to fight, which was like the way that people say that they were like fighting for democracy. And I liked how Orwell talked about that as like a way to flatten again like the revolutionary potential or what people were actively fighting for, which
mm,
was communism, like anarchism, like it was for an anti-capitalist movement. It wasn't just for like democracy, which
mm,
what does that mean in terms of like liberatory potential? And I
mm,
do like when people talk about people who went like there's like this sort of like infamous like in a good way like international brigade where like there's things that like commemorate and memorialize the people that went from the UK and joined that brigade, but a lot of them are described as like going to fight for democracy when like they were like literal actual like card carrying Communist Party members, or and like
mm.
yeah, so I appreciated that and was also kind of
Yeah,
like we still do that now. That sucks.
yeah. Because he doesn't talk a lot about class, but I feel like he talks enough about it to make it seem like it was a really integral part of like the way that they thought about the war and also each other. So like it talks about, yeah, like who's working class in the militia or like in the POUM, and like how that works, and with the leaders and for like lateral organizations. And I think they also talk about the hardest part of the war being like potentially killing other working class people, or even like the fascists trying to defend themselves from being killed by being like, I'm a worker.
Mm,
And also generally like not being very enthusiastic about like fighting on the fascist side like they are
yeah.
soldiers, a lot of them. I also read a second book, maybe not really a book, it was like 60 pages from this Norwegian journalist who went to the Spanish Civil War not to fight, but as a journalist. And he also talks about that one of the soldiers he talks to says that the hardest part for him was to like kill other working class people. He talks about throwing a grenade at someone and hitting him but not killing him, and then making eye contact with him and like seeing that he was a fellow worker and then throwing a second grenade.
Ooh, yeah.
Um,
I mean, I think that's what like Homage to Catalonia doesn't have very much of like a lot of emotion about
mm,
those things. I mean, partially it's because it's
yeah, well they don't, yeah,
humbling, like
yeah, they're like so far apart that they can't hit each other.
right. And like even when there is that one like attack that he's on and he goes and there obviously are like stakes, but it is just quite like clownish and
Yeah.
I mean I think he still manages it well in the sense that he talks he doesn't like talk from a perspective of like bourgeois shit. But also obviously like George Orwell's own like class position is like different to a lot of the workers that he's like with.
Mm,
And yeah, I mean, he doesn't talk so much about like language stuff except from right at the beginning. But, I mean, I wonder how much that like actually impacted a lot of it?
Well, I think when he starts getting into the more like political explanations, I feel like I do get the impression that he's like, it took me so long to catch on, and partially that's because of the language
Right.
stuff.
Yeah. Also, we should say like we read the book and it was the same book, but it was ordered differently.
Right.
You read the version that like allowed for his like revisions, I believe, and I read the version that was originally the published version, I think,
Yeah.
which just basically like shifted where these particular chapters that did explain a lot of the like organizational, factional stuff to be in different places. So Mari's it was like at the end and mine was just like through. I don't know that it made like much difference, but obviously because we'd talked about like you had already finished it and talked to me about like this final chapter that like summed up stuff.
Yeah.
And then I was reading a chapter and I was like, I feel like this is kind of a good summary.
Mm.
So that's what like tipped me off to that.
Yeah, I do think those are some of the only changes, except for a few times I think he like corrects something that he got wrong. I felt like obviously if your goal is just to like make it understandable to as many people, then I don't think separating it out in chapters, either in the middle or at the end, is a great idea. But like, obviously, most people are reading this who are interested in the Spanish Civil War,
Yeah.
so then I think it's kind of fine. And like, I thought that they were great. I think there's a lot of disappointment in learning about the Spanish Civil War too, even when there's a lot of really great stuff. And I think it is portrayed really well in Homage to Catalonia, because you get this, firstly the disappointment that we talked about, which is George Orwell failing to shoot a fascist, and how they're like not really doing much on the front line. It's kind of futile the way that they're fighting, at least while he's there. And then there's all the other stuff about like the infighting and the killing each other.
Yeah.
Which maybe the killing each other isn't that much in Homage to Catalonia, but the sort of like pointing fingers and yelling traitor or Trotskyist at everyone and yeah, falling apart in that way is,
Yeah.
I feel like Fighting Women, the great book, I feel like you get more of an impression of just like people being killed like by their own side, ostensibly,
Mm,
for supposedly being a secret fascist or for
right.
being a Trotskyist.
There's two things I want to say, I guess. One is, I mean, I feel like the like Barcelona time with like these shootouts that like, and well, it wasn't even the shootouts. It was like the way that like inside of the city, it was like at siege with itself, and but it was
Mm.
also like so absolutely pointless, and but people were dying. I mean, it was also just one of the moments where you are like, God, these are like men from the 1930s. Like, of course, they're just shooting up people. Like,
Like wasting precious ammo too, so annoying.
yeah, well, I mean, and considering we did hear about like how little ammo and little guns there were, and then suddenly there's all here, and they're all fighting against each other. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
it's so ridiculous. But that was also one of the ways that I did just feel like, again, like I said, like Stalinism really just ruined like international communism, and I mean like communism in like a broad sense that would include like anarcho-communist, like because of the way that it just made like this like authoritarian state like desperately defend itself, including in like international, socialist groups, which could have been incredible, but instead we're having to fight this like battle. And obviously in the 1930s, that's like the height of Stalinist purges, and that's obviously why all of this like anti-Trotskyist stuff is happening too. And yeah, it just like that also is what I took away from this as well. Was just like it made me so sad about the state of like international left
Mm.
solidarity because of like the rot that was and is Stalinism. And I mean, I think also like there are lots of lessons to be learned. I don't think that like Homage to Catalonia is like focused on those lessons. It is just like about an experience. But I also feel like it's hard not to read that and come away feeling like it's even more important to like hold the line on things that are like vital to what your revolutionary politics are, instead of being worried about the enemy. And so collaborating with, capitalists or like people who aren't like actually on your side. And like obviously they don't have to be like 100%. I do think that like communists and anarchists should work together.
Well, a lot of the time when anarchists do that, they end up dead though. Like I think
It's,
but then you're like perpetuating some of the same kind of separatism rather than, like it begets more separatism,
yeah.
which is obviously really frustrating because you got to find like the balance between, like who's your ally right now. It would hopefully be most people fighting fascism, but you gotta have some standards about
Yeah.
who's in as well. Yeah, like those fucking Trotskyists. I mean, we gotta get them out.
Obviously Trotskyists today are just like wild to talk to be honest. But like
One of the funniest communists for sure.
well, also all they want to do is sell you their stupid newspaper. Like that's what
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like the Orthodox
The
Mark
Maoists too, like
Maoists. Oh, no.
the like the Norwegian Maoists here are really funny. They're all old. They're kind of different from, like the kind of Twitter Maoists, and they put weird pamphlets in your post box.
Wow, shout out to the Norwegian Maoists. Anyway, is there anything else you want to say about the book or just in general?
I think it is really interesting and horrifying and important to read about and from people who have been in wars, because I think it's sort of easy to be like, well, oh my, wars are horrific and sort of end it there. And I do think it is something that deserves attention. from us, even if it's quite upsetting to read. I think this is a good one to read because I think Orwell does it really well. Like he's writing very honestly, it feels. I was so curious about the Nordahl Grieg book, the journalist who went and because he was a Stalinist,
I remember.
like
Yeah.
very much so, and he spent some time. I think he ran some kind of like Norwegian newspaper journal type thing. I believe this was later on, but he was very like anti-Trotskyist or whatever, and like very. So I was wondering if that would be apparent in his book, but it wasn't at all. He didn't get into the sort of political faction stuff of it all, but he also wrote it, but he wrote it up as a book a few years later.
Right.
We should also include at some point a picture of my puzzle.
Okay, well, let's talk about your puzzle right now. Right, an FAI. Honestly, I hadn't really got to that. I think it's because I only imagined it as saying CNT.
Every time I read CNT, like, what is that song? I goes like,
Um,
CNT.
uh, we went different ways, and I don't know what it's talking about.
What did
I said
what?
cunt.
Oh yeah, well it's just called like CNT Dynamite or something. CNT
Oh, of course.
is AC/DC, yeah. But yeah, great puzzle. It's from Anarcho Puzzles, which you can get on Etsy.
Hmm.
Or if you are in Oslo, you can get from a bookshop called Rosa Bøker.
I will link it below.
It was fun to puzzle.
And yeah, I don't think there is anything else left to say. I mean, well, I guess there are things I think about like the book and like George Orwell, and obviously we talked about like his wife stuff, and like I don't think he talks very much about like women, for example, and like, blah blah blah. Like it's obviously like a partial account, and I think it's
Mm.
not trying not to be.
He's kind of funny about women, like nothing that was very worrying, but sometimes when he's talking about the like beautiful Spanish women in the villages or whatever. I
Yeah.
guess he talks a lot about how beautiful Spanish people are in general.
It's true, yes. And also, I mean, he does make a lot of assumptions too. And yeah,
Yeah,
but also, I mean, he clearly is writing out of a place of incredible tenderness.
yeah,
Even though he does leave and is just kind of like, I don't want to go back. Like,
yeah. The first scene is so like beautiful and gay, talking about
I forgot about
the
that.
beautiful face of this Italian anarchist and how he loves anarchists and loves this man, never sees him again or something. You
Yeah.
like it starts off and you almost think that this must be his like trusted companion or something, and it's like some stranger who
Um,
he like gets a little obsessed with.
He didn't bring his wife, but he did bring his boyfriend. Yeah, I thought you were going to say that he's weird about women because we read that quote when we were looking up about his wife and stuff. Because he had two wives. But yeah, we were looking maybe on
Two
Wikipedia
wives.
or something about like what he said. And you found that quote where he was being horrible about women. It was when he was like 80 or something. Do you
I
remember?
don't remember this at all.
Yeah, it was like him just being like women and like evil and like
Oh my god, yeah, when he was like, women only want to have sex.
oh, that's right.
And
Yes, yes.
wasn't that it? He's
Yeah.
like, God, women.
Women are just
They just
hounding
want
men
to
to have
fuck.
sex with them. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you very much for discussing this with me, Mari, and for showing us your puzzle. I'll try to leave a link to like the things that we discussed in the description box, like the books and blah blah blah. And definitely, yeah, like I said, let us slash me know what you thought about this book. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you when I next talk to you. Bye.